my team and I just spent 90 minutes inside the ICE facility conducting the kind of congressional oversight that we need to see all across the country and frankly is not happening enough. We asked a lot of questions about everything from the process that they're going through to bringing people in, to the conditions that they are, we're very much on the mics, ma'am, to the conditions that the detainees here are put into, the food, the access to attorneys, the access to family members that they are given. We have requested more data that they have promised to us on how long people are staying here, and in particular how that has changed over time. You know, some of the observations that I made on my last visit, that there were not enough blankets and adequate facilities for people to be detained here for any length of time. Those have not changed, but we have been promised that they will change. We are going to follow up and stay on top of them to make sure that they get basic humanitarian things like sleeping mats, so they're not sleeping on concrete floors or concrete benches if they have to stay here overnight, to make sure that they get adequate meals that meet basic humanitarian standards, so that people are adequately fed. I asked specific questions about what reading materials they have. I saw a stack of Bibles. Do they have access to Qurans and other religious materials that individuals may request? I was told that that is the case, but all of these things we will follow up on. One thing that was apparent throughout the visit is that the presence that you have here as Americans standing up for American values, it absolutely affects what happens behind those doors. And the practices that we saw, that we've witnessed here in Burlington, do not meet the standards that we would like to see, but they are far better than in other facilities and other places we have seen around the United States. I give all of you a lot of credit for that, and that's why I will continue to be here with you conducting this oversight, going inside the facility, not just standing out here and complaining about it, but going in and getting into the details with the officers to keep them accountable to the laws that they are charged to enforce and that they have to uphold. So many of you are very familiar with the details of this operation, so I want to go into some of those details right now. This is supposed to be a temporary detention facility, and some of our biggest problems with it have been when people have been stuck here for a long time, like Marcelo, the honors kid, stuck here for 6 days back in June when I visited and we came out. Look, the facilities in there are completely inadequate and inhumane for anyone to be staying here for an extended length of time. It does seem that they are moving people through here more quickly. The consequence of that is that they don't have as much time to have lawyers intervene in their cases. So there's a push and pull here where, although the humanitarian standards are inadequate and we don't want people stuck here for a long period of time like Marcelo was detained, at the same time we want to give people adequate access to lawyers and whatnot to see their cases. We dug in detail into the student in Boston who was detained and whisked off to Texas and then to Honduras to understand how that happened so quickly, because it certainly had the appearance that she was being whisked out of Massachusetts before a judge could get after her case. We're going to actually review the logs on this. We've requested the logs, but it is our understanding from the conversation that in many ways she was a victim of bad luck, where she came in, there was already a flight scheduled, a regular rotation flight to move detainees out of here so that they're not stuck here for extended periods of time. She was put on that flight and then sent out to Texas before the order came in. She was not my constituent, but before any other congressional office got in an order or her lawyer made contact to request that the court intervene. These are the kinds of details that we need to get into to hold them accountable. But I'll tell you what, your presence here makes a huge difference. They know that they're being watched. They know that they're being held accountable. and we're going to continue doing that until this situation improves. There are some people who are so opposed to this operation here in Burlington that they want to push ICE out. I'll tell you what, I don't want ICE to not have your supervision. I don't want ICE to move this facility to a place where there aren't responsible Americans like yourselves who show up every week, in some cases every day, to hold these officers and employees accountable. So I think we got to think strategically about how we go about this. I don't want this facility moved to the boondocks of northern New England or something like that, where there's not the presence, the oversight that you all make possible here in Burlington. I'd be happy to take some questions. There were a lot fewer detainees in there today than there were in June. I'd say there were probably 10 times as many detainees there in June as I saw today. I think partly that is an effort put on by our, made possible and facilitated by our pressure to not detain people here too long. It also may be a bit of luck of the draw, just with where the cycle is in the week. Although they do say that a lot of people come in for their regular check-ins at the beginning of the week. So this was actually a very good day to come and conduct this oversight, because the numbers dwindle as they get closer to Thursday and Friday. No, that's fine. So we did not speak directly to any detainees, but there were fewer than 10 detainees in there that we saw this time, and I think there were a lot more, closer to probably 50 when I was here in June. Look, candidly, there's no excuse that they have not sleeping mats from June until now. I mean, they claim that they were trying to get them funded under the shutdown, and that wasn't able to happen, but that doesn't account for the period of time between June and October before the shutdown started. We have been promised that those materials have been ordered. They did go through a process where they tried to get cots, and those were denied. I think they don't, there's certain restrictions on what sorts of materials they can allow in holding cells. Cots can be taken apart, used as weapons, things like that. But basic mats, at least, there's no excuse for not having those. And so we are going to be following up in the next few weeks to make sure that those the deliveries come in. One common frustration is that many of you and others in the community have submitted supplies, and they are not permitted to use those. And I mean, the only thing I will say is that a lot of people offer to donate services to my congressional office that we are not permitted to use either. So this is frustrating government bureaucracy, but that wasn't so much of a surprise to me. It was absolutely a surprise that we don't have basic mats on the floor.
Did you ask concerned about due process in here at the building that immigrants are not receiving?
About the process?
Due process. That immigrants are receiving due process?
I mean, look, we witnessed an asylum interview going on there. We made a lot of inquiries about how they're able to contact, lawyers and family members. They made it clear that detainees have more access to lawyers and family members when they are not in a temporary holding facility like this, but in a longer-term holding facility. One of the issues, again, this is in the technical details here, but one of the issues, because we asked about out-of-state transfers, are you just moving people out of state because you're not going to get the results that you want or the Trump administration wants from judges in Massachusetts? And one of the issues is that there is no longer-term holding facility in Massachusetts for female detainees. So they have to go out of state. Or if they're not, they don't want them staying here long-term, they have to be moved out of state. There are facilities for males. We also asked a lot of questions. I asked questions specifically about the lawlessness that we see from not just ICE, but all these other federal agencies that come in on these raids, and there is definitely some conflict amongst these federal agencies that is not being managed well by this administration. I think that a lot of the absolute violence that you see against people being detained, like Penske trucks rolling up in a Home Depot parking lot, that's actually coming from Customs and Border Patrol and not from ICE, an organization that's been charged with interior enforcement as opposed to chasing people down at the borders. That's just further evidence of the fact that this administration is not following the federal guidelines for how these services are even supposed to be used.
Time for one more question, folks. Sorry.
You said that they're trying to move people out of here faster. That's kind of the point that you're trying to get across here. Do we know what the conditions are like in the facilities that they're being moved to? Like the facilities in Texas, Louisiana, and all the other places that they get moved to after they're here. Do we know that they're off there or what?
So part of the problem is that, technically, I mean, we are putting the pressure on them to, for example, provide sleeping mats. But technically, because this is not a long-term holding facility where no one is supposed to stay overnight, they don't have a federal requirement to have that, right? And so all these other longer-term facilities have these requirements. Like, for example, families are not allowed to visit here. There's no visitation rights here, but visitation rights are accorded at these other facilities. So yes, the conditions are better, but do I just trust that? No, of course not. And members of Congress that represent these longer term facilities need to be conducting this kind of oversight as well. Absolutely.
Congressman, on average, were you told how long the people that are inside are spending? You mentioned the example of Marcelo back in the summer, but are people spending less time here to get an average number? And what is the solution then? Is the solution to open a detention center for females, for women in Massachusetts, to try to make sure they stay in Massachusetts and they're not sent to Louisiana or Texas or some other places? What's your...
Look, it's a great question. I mean, this is the push and pull that I think all of us have as activists who want to see this behavior stop from the administration, but at the same time want to accord the people getting wrapped up in this as many rights as possible. So, you don't want to, none of us here are going to say, oh yeah, we want to advocate for the opening of more facilities. But in the case of a female facility in Massachusetts, it actually probably would be smart so that they are not being sent out of state and that they get to go before Massachusetts judges. And of course, just simply have easier access to their friends and family, while they're in detention, as well as local lawyers. So that's something yes. So this is the point. We got to be smart and strategic about this, right? And frankly, I don't want to see any of this happening, but I'd much rather see, if people have to get detained, I'd rather see them detained in Massachusetts with access to Massachusetts judges and Massachusetts lawyers and their families in Massachusetts with their Massachusetts attorneys than sent elsewhere. We have asked for the average stay length. We've been told that's come down. It looks like it's come down, but they have promised to provide us those numbers.
They need to supply full accountability for every person that goes in that building.
That's it.
Who we are supporting, Esau Chandazzo. Two hours ago.
Yes. I did.
You saw an asylum case. Did you see who was the person who saw?
I can't talk about who the individual. I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure.
What can we do to make sure that we just stop the detentions as well? So when you said that they're leaving, are they going to be deported? What can we do to make sure they're not detained, to make sure they're not locked up and they're not deported?
So there's a few things. Number one, we need to continue this exact kind of pressure, and it needs to happen at facilities all over the country, so that ICE feels the pressure to not detain everyone they run across, but only detain people who meet these very strict requirements.
And are there things that you're doing to make sure that that's happening? Because these people are not criminals.
Oh, absolutely. And
listen.
I'm going to keep conducting these oversight visits. I am going to keep coming back here. I'm not just going to stand outside. I'm going to continue going inside. We are going to follow up on all the questions that we asked today, and we're happy to report those results to you as well. Thank you very much for coming.
Unannounced visits.
Unannounced
Can you
visits.
follow up on SL and let us know? Can you go back in there and ask?
Yes, thank you.
There are still people spending multiple days here.
And yeah,